Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DMV Business Show. I'm your host, Otto Sevilla, and today my special guest is Kevin Learned. Kevin is a partner at McMahon, Welch and Learned, PLLC. He's also known as the trusted advisor, the trusted legal advisor for entrepreneurs and companies. Welcome to the show, Kevin. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. So as I mentioned before, I'd like to start off from the very beginning. Are you originally from the DMV area?
No, actually, I grew up in Sacramento in Northern California.
Okay.
Although I did live here for a few years. My dad was federal government. He worked for the Bureau of Land Management his whole career, and he had a little stint in D.C. And so I lived here in Vienna, actually, between the ages of like 5 and 8.
Okay. And then after that, you moved to Northern California?
And then back to Northern California, right? And then so I stayed there, and then I was always interested in politics and international relations, et cetera. And so I actually went to George Washington for undergrad. And so I came back to the DC area for college.
Okay. Was that always the plan growing up in North California to come back to school here in the DC area?
No, I assumed I would stay in California. My parents were very strict. They're like, you're going to an in-state school because that's what we're going to pay for. But I lucked out and actually got a full ride to GW, so they couldn't really argue with it too much.
Okay.
So, but it was a fun experience.
Now, before GW, how were you as a kid growing up? Did you have any special hobbies or interests that you can remember?
I did scouts a lot when I was younger, and then when I got to high school, I shifted over and we did a junior ROTC with through the Air Force, and so I did that all through high school. Little bit of sports, mostly wrestling was my main sport when I was younger. I was a pretty small kid. Wrestling was nice because you only went against people in your weight class.
Yes.
So even the playing field a little bit.
For wrestling, did you start in elementary school or what age?
Junior high. I started in junior high.
Okay. The reason I'm asking, my oldest son, pre-COVID, we had him in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
So, grappling and there's a little bit of wrestling. And I would see kids come in, Kevin, who had some wrestling experience and they would just clean them up. And these are kids, my oldest, Liam, is 9. So these are kids, still elementary age kids. But you can clearly notice the difference. Any type of wrestling that they had in the background, even so young, when they come to the mats in jiu-jitsu, they were just rolling around with you. And it was like, it was interesting to see.
Right. Well, you have to remember, I was born in 73. So back then, people weren't as much into pushing their kids through a lot of major sports really young. I mean, it was the basic t-ball and soccer and that sort of thing. And you didn't really have people thinking their kids were going to get scholarships when they were 5 years old. So,
but
a little more of a modern thing where people are really pushing their kids early into these various sports at ages 5 and 6 and et cetera. So,
but talking to parents who have kids in college or past college, a lot of them tell me they're like, if you try to get an athletic scholarship, yes, it could happen, but you have to be the top of the top. They're like, what they've told me, they're like, just focus on school and academics, and your chances are much higher getting an academic scholarship than athletic, of course, depending on what sports you're playing.
Right. Well, there are not a lot of athlete genes in my family, so I'm not really concerned about whether my kids are going to get athletic scholarships. We're not banking on that one.
We're
academic all the way for us.
So you said growing up, you were in the Scouts, Boy Scouts, and Cub Scouts, both?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's fun now because both of my sons are in. I've got 2 boys, a 6-year-old and a 12-year-old, and they're both doing Scouts now. The older one just started last year, and the younger one started a year ago into Cub Scouts. So I've got them both feet in there. So it's been fun.
So the 6-year-old, is he, a bear now or no?
Tiger.
Tiger. Okay. I had one also in Cub Scouts before COVID again.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so then you were doing wrestling, and then how did you end up coming to GW?
So like I said, I was interested in international affairs. I took a class in international affairs in high school and really liked it. I was kind of interested in politics. As it turns out, my best friend growing up in high school, he was actually going to go to Georgetown. So I knew that I'd have someone that was out here that I have connection with. And then I ended up got a full scholarship to GW. So all those pieces kind of fell together.
On wrestling or?
No, academic.
Oh, okay.
no athlete genes here. No, purely academic.
Okay, that's good. So back then, your goal was getting into poli-sci. Is that what it was?
International affairs.
Oh, international
GW,
affairs. Okay,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. Okay.
Which we jokingly called it poli-sci with a language. So
What made you? Were you already thinking law career then, or what made you choose that bachelor's?
um, it was a possibility. No, I was probably thinking more of working for the federal government,
Okay.
with probably one of the intel agencies or something like that.
Okay, I see. So you wanted to be sort of like an FBI, CIA agent type of thing?
More on the analyst side.
Analyst? Okay. Um,
Again, no athlete genes here.
hey, you never know. I'm trying to think. I'm curious. Have you seen the series Jack Ryan?
Yeah, that's what Jack Ryan. He was an analyst,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. With I think
Yeah,
it's
the
Amazon
analysts stay
Prime,
behind the
right?
desks. They don't get behind the. They don't come out from behind the desk.
Only Jack Ryan gets to transition.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good series, by the way. Okay, so then you go to GW, you get your bachelor's, and then from there, what do you
Yeah.
think?
So, well, the other big thing when I was in there, actually started working. As I mentioned, I was into politics, and so I worked on the Hill. I started out. I interned for my congressman for a little bit, and then quickly got a job in the Senate, and I was working for the Senate for all 4 years of college.
Oh wow. Okay.
So yeah, I got that job in the December of my freshman year, and I stayed with them. I stayed with a senator from Arkansas named Dale Bumpers,
Okay.
one of the old school Democratic senators. Stayed with him from then all the way through graduation and through the following summer.
Okay. And then from there, you're thinking, let me go into politics and go to law school, or?
Well, I was thinking, so I was doing, because I was in the Senate for so long, all through college, I was kind of doing the sorts of jobs that most people do right out of college. And so I knew that I was kind of already prepared for that, and I was wanting something a little more. So I assumed I wanted to go and get an advanced degree. I wasn't really an academic booksy sort of guy, and so I knew I was really thinking either law school or business school. And the law part I kind of had covered working for the Senate, so working with lots of lawyers. And then so I decided I went and got a minor in business administration while I was in college to kind of get exposed to the finance and business side of things. And so I was kind of, then I was looking both at law school and business school and trying to decide between the two of those. And what it really came down to is that I just felt more of an affinity and a better connection with the people I worked with in the Senate who were lawyers than I did with the people who I was in business school with. I mean, I enjoyed their company and hung out and, et cetera, but I really felt a closer bond with the lawyers. And I'm very much a relationship sort of guy, and kind of looking at things subjectively, I just could tell I would fit in better as a lawyer than I would fit in as a business person.
Mm-hmm.
Although I still liked both. But that actually is also what drew me to being a transactional attorney. So I am a lawyer, but I'm a business lawyer. So that's how I was able to bring the two of those together. So I can look at a spreadsheet and manipulate it, and I know what financial statements are, and I know how to read them and all that sort of thing, which has all been very helpful.
Yeah, that's interesting. You can go into different types of law, and then back then you saw the intersection between business and law. You decided to go that route.
Yeah. So I knew from when you first start law school, everyone's talking about Supreme Court cases and litigation and all this stuff, and I had zero interest. I was taking tax courses and securities and transactional courses. I knew I had zero desire in being a litigator or being an administrative lawyer. So I knew from day one that I was going to be a transactional attorney.
Where'd you end up going for law school?
University of Chicago.
Okay. So then you moved from DC to Chicago?
Right, DC to Chicago. Yeah.
Okay.
And then after Chicago, back to DC again.
Okay. And that's where, I guess, you received an offer from a law firm here back in DC, and that's what made you
I got
move
an
back?
offer. It's a New York-based law firm called Debevoise and Plimpton. They had a small DC office, mostly did securities work, but the group I joined was doing corporate work for investment management clients. So a lot of their clients were banks and fund managers and that sort of thing. And so I was doing transactional work for places like Commerzbank and Neuberger Berman and Sullivan Smith Barney and folks like that, setting up funds and doing acquisitions of banks and that sort of thing.
Most of these banks, though, are headquarters either New York City or if not Charlotte, though, right?
Well, Commerzbank is German.
Okay.
And then Neuberger Berman, I believe, is New York. Sullivan Smith Barney was Chicago. So they were all over the place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you're in the DC offers for here, and then from there, or how long are you
so
there?
I was there for just about a year and a half. And what happened was it was a small practice, And we had one partner, one counsel, and a number of associates. The partner decided she was going to move to Germany for personal reasons. She had a relationship with a client, and she was going to move out there. And the counsel decided he was going to move, switch firms, because he used to be with the SEC, and a former SEC commissioner was leaving the SEC and going to another firm, and he decided to join her. And so people were leaving, and I knew I was a first/second year attorney that it was going to be kind of tough without having direct partner training anymore. And I knew that either I would have to either switch into the litigation group, and we already talked about how I didn't want to do that, or I'd probably have to do a lot more work out of the New York office, and either being managed remotely or physically have to move up there. And I didn't see that was going to go well. And so I started looking around, and this was in 2000, so it was right in the middle of the tech bubble. And so I took a job with Shaw Pittman, which at the time was one of the largest general practice law firms in DC. And so I joined their corporate group right in the middle of the tech bubble, and of course about a year before the bubble burst.
Yes. Okay. And then there, your focus was again sort of securities, or then different?
So doing general corporate work.
Okay.
So I started off, working all kinds of transactions. Dan Snyder was a client of that firm, and before I joined, they had done the Redskins deal, but he was in the process of selling off a lot of his corporate assets, and so I represented him in a sale of one of his IT companies, and then a few other IT companies I did transactions with as well. And then when the bubble burst, then I started kind of trying to find other places in the firm where I fit in, because the corporate work really dropped off quickly. And so I started doing corporate transactions for our communications group. So I did buying and selling radio stations. Our financial institutions group, which was kind of similar to what I was doing in my old firm. I got involved with them and helped them do some private equity funds with them. And that led me into doing a lot of work with Fannie Mae. So Fannie Mae did low-income housing tax credit deals, and a lot of those were private label funds. And so I got involved in those because I understood the fund structure. And then we started working on those various investments and doing diligence and worked on those acquisitions. And at the same time, I was still doing all the corporate stuff too. So that went on for a few years, kind of just helping out wherever I could in the firm, which is also what kept me around. There were a lot of layoffs, but since I was able to, get my fingers in a whole different parts of the firm, I was able to build my hours that way. Then in 2005, Shaw Pittman merged with Pillsbury. Pillsbury was a large San Francisco-based firm. Didn't have much of a DC presence, and that was kind of the purpose of the merger. And when that happened, all kinds of firm politics. So Shaw Pittman had a DC office, and they had a Northern Virginia office. And the Northern Virginia office was mostly the tech companies. That practice as a whole moved over to Morrison & Foerster when the merger happened. And all that was left behind was a couple of partners, one who did government contracts deals, another one who did tech deals, and then some senior counsels and other folks. And so they had a need for senior associates out in Northern Virginia to support that practice because most of the folks had left when the merger happened. So I moved from DC to Northern Virginia in 2005, and that's when I started focusing on government contracting deals.
Okay.
And I learned, that industry. So again, I was already an M&A attorney, general corporate practice, but I started learning the government contracting piece starting in 2005.
Okay.
And so I did that, and I still did I did tech deals as well, a lot of biotech, and some of the run-of-the-mill stuff. I'd support our San Francisco office. I flew out for doing a couple deals there, just again helping out wherever it was needed, and that went pretty well until about 2008. In 2008 is when we had the recession again. So
yes.
Those things always change. And so we had gone through a number of layoffs, and I was really the most senior non-partner left in the group at that point, and work just dried up. And so there wasn't a space for me. So I'd been there for 9 years, and just work dried up and wasn't able to continue there. And so I left there, and they gave me a few months, obviously. And so I left there in early 2009 and joined a small firm out in McLean, about a dozen lawyers or so. And I joined them to start lead their corporate practice. They not to start it. They had a corporate practice to lead their corporate practice. And that's when I kind of moved away from the larger clients and focus more on the small to mid-market clients that I focus on now. And so I was there for about 2.5 years. And one of the reasons I joined that group is they had a government contracts practice. They had 2 lawyers that were really good government contracts attorneys. And then after a couple of years, for various reasons, figured it was a time to leave that place. And so I was looking to leave, and I was looking around, but I was talking to the 2 partners who do the government contracts, and they were looking to leave also. And so we decided, well, hey, the 3 of us like working together, so why don't we 3 leave together and start our own firm? And so that was my foray into entrepreneurship. So and it was stressful, because you're trying to set up a business, and you still have a job, and your job is going to be competitive with the new business, so it's always touchy. And lawyers have their own special rules on how that works, and we're following those and doing all that, but it's still very stressful. And then we started it November 1st, so we just hit our anniversary 9 years ago.
Okay.
So we set up shop out in Reston. We picked Reston because there's a large number of government contractors that are out here. Our old firm was in Tysons, and Tysons and Reston are kind of the 2 main places to be. And so we wanted to be kind of separate and not stepping on the toes of our former job. And then also my partners lived out in Leesburg. I lived in Springfield at the time, so the commute was fine either way. So we set that up about 9 years ago, just the 3 of us. And we brought the bulk of our clientele with us. And so we hit the ground running. We had good revenue starting out. And pretty soon thereafter, we brought in a counsel, and who we ended up making partner a couple of years after that. And so there's 4 of us for a while. And then things really started picking up a few years ago. I brought in 2 counsel. One was a guy I used to work with at Pillsbury. He was a military, prior career military guy, and then he's a government contracts attorney. So we brought him in, and another woman who I had met through networking, who was solo as well. Brought her in to join us and made them counsel. And then the firm just finally hit our stride and really, have been doing really, really well the past several years. So It's been good. 9 years now, 9 years since we've had the firm. So
Kevin, you have such a diverse background before with all your experience at different law firms, but now from the sounds of it, is mostly your focus is on government contracting clients?
So the firm as a whole is really a government contract shop. So there's 6 lawyers, 5.5 of us are government contracts attorneys, and 1.5, I being one, is a general corporate lawyer. So the bulk of the clientele is definitely government contractors. Myself personally, though, I'd say about half of my clientele are just commercial clients. It was just announced today, I represented a law firm. So Redgraves LLP just merged with Nelson Mullins. They're an e-discovery shop. Nothing government contract related, purely corporate. And so that deal just got announced yesterday, or today actually. And so I represented the seller on that one. I'm working on another transaction now where I can't disclose the names, but it's a IT services company. They provide IT services for small businesses, and they're actually buying the commercial business from a government contractor. So there's a government contractor involved, but my client is purely commercial and is acquiring the commercial business. I've got another one that just came in today. It's a psychology practice, and they're buying another psychology practice. So most of what I do is services as opposed to products. I've had some products companies, but most of them are services related, but doesn't have to be government contract related. And frankly, about half my clients are commercial.
Okay. So it sounds like you're still in the M&A world.
Yes. So the bulk of the sweet spot of my practice is M&A transactions. But in general, I am a corporate guy who mostly does ownership issues. So I'll do company formation, any sort of agreement between partners. So operating agreements and partnership agreements, joint ventures, shareholder agreements, buy-sells, cross-indemnification agreements, and then just general operational stuff for companies too, like with employees. So like consulting agreements, NDAs, employment agreements, a little bit of equity compensation for employees, although frankly I've been doing less of that and I've been outsourcing it because it's not my total skill set. I do some trademarks. Again, I just the simple stuff. I bring in an expert when it gets really complicated. But issues between my clients and their customers or their vendors, either just contractual negotiations or settlement disputes. I do all sorts of financing, so friends and family, convertible notes, private financing, commercial financing, and some exempt offerings, Reg D only, and no public offerings at all. I don't do public work.
Sure.
And then the buying and selling.
Okay. Okay. I'm curious, you've been doing this for a long, long time. How do you typically find your clients besides the referral, or is it mostly just all referral business now at this point in your career?
Yeah, it's 90% referral at this point. So, it's referrals from other lawyers. Other lawyers are great sources of referrals. Another thing I like about corporate practice opposed to litigation is that the corporate lawyers actually like each other. And it's a repeat player business, and we're on the opposite side. Like, it's funny, we're doing a deal. We just did a deal where I represented the seller. Another attorney who I used to work with at Pillsbury represented the buyer.
Okay.
And a different attorney who we both worked with were representing the private equity fund that was funding the whole thing. So, all three of us were, alumni of the same firm and worked together, and now we're opposite each other on this one deal.
Yeah.
So, and that happens a lot. So, I mean, there's only a handful of attorneys that are really good at what they're doing in this area, especially on the government piece and commercial stuff too. So you see people all the time. And so you have to keep in good graces with each other. So we get conflict referrals from folks. You got two clients buying each other. You can't represent both of them. Sometimes
Sure.
you can't represent either. They get referred out. The big firms often send me stuff when it's too small for them to handle, because I can handle the smaller matters a lot more flexibly, with a lot more flexibly than they can. I get referrals from accountants and bankers and banks and those sorts of folks. And then, of course, existing and former clients are the best those are the best referrals, where they're coming from other folks I've worked with before. So.
Sure. If someone is seeing this, Kevin, and they have their own company, whatever it may be, whether it's government contracted, IT, or whatever it is, and they're thinking of possibly acquiring a company, and I'm sure it depends, obviously, case by case scenario, everyone's different, but any suggestions or tips or advice you can give them to look out for, or questions they should know beforehand before exploring that option?
Sure. I mean, the first thing is obviously buy what you know. You really shouldn't be acquiring a business as an add-on to what you're doing unless you actually understand the business that you're buying. It's not really the time to get into a new line of business through acquiring, because you're just not going to know what to look for. You're not going to know what questions to ask. You're not going to know what you don't know. You're not going to know what should be there that's not. So, the first thing is acquire what you know. The second thing is, if you have an existing business and so you're looking to add to that business, you really want to look closely at two things. One, the finances, like what do they charge? Like, are they charging their customers kind of the same thing you charge? And do they pay their people about the same as you pay them? Because if those aren't in line, those are hard to put together. The other thing is culture, and people greatly undervalue culture in acquisitions. And I tell people, when you're looking to acquire a business, talk to as many people that you can at that business. And sometimes that's hard. Sometimes you can only get past the seller. But, determine, like, are these people that I would hire if I was looking to hire someone, right? Or are they not? Because, and you can look at that from the owner level too. Like, is the owner, like, if this owner was 20 years younger, just starting out, is this the sort of guy I'd want to have on my team? And if the answer is yes, great. If the answer is no, then you got to think, the people he hires are going to be more like him, not more like you. So really see if you click with the person you're buying from. If you don't click with the person you're buying from, there's a good chance you're not going to click with the people he hired either. So culture is very important, and do as much diligence as you can, looking at the people and making sure they're going to be a good fit in your organization and whether they're people that you would want to be around in the first place.
Okay. Yeah. Great advice. Thank you. You mentioned now your focus is mostly on small to mid-sized companies, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is there a specific, for example, target group or size that you prefer to work with, whether it's number of employees, annual revenue, whatever it may be?
Yeah. So on the government piece, it's most of them are small business, so it's NAICS code small, right? So if you are small for your NAICS code, and if you're a government contractor listening to this, you know what I'm talking about. But for numbers, we'll do startups, so people with no revenue.
Okay.
Usually it's 25, 30 million in revenue
Okay.
is pretty much the sweet spot. I mean, I do have clients that are larger, either because they kind of grew beyond where they were and they just have stuck with us because they like the work we do. Every once in a while they'll bring us in because they'll realize that, you know, they want our specific level of attention that they're not getting at the bigger firm, or they're cost conscious or whatever. But most of them are kind of below the 25 to 30 million range. I'd say the sweet spot is probably between, you know, 5 million and 20 million is
Okay.
where most of the clients end up. Although we have a big number that are below 5, we just don't do as much for them because they just don't have the budget for it or the
Sure.
need, frankly. So.
Sure. When you're doing buyouts for them, do you see them consolidating, and are they still keeping multiple locations? What do you see happening there?
Yeah, so when I'm representing the buyer, so again, most my clients tend to be smaller. So if I'm
Okay.
representing the buyer, my buyer clients tend to be mid-sized clients that are looking just to add folks to what they're doing. So they're usually adding a contract that they don't have, or they're you know, just trying to bulk up on size a little bit, that sort of thing. So they're usually integrating the clients into their existing business, or sometimes you see a lot nowadays where people are just buying a business to start with. Like they'll have a very, very small business and they're buying a much larger business. And they're going to probably do that with bank financing. And in that case, they're really kind of taking over the business that's there, and they're going to merge their business into the one they're buying, is the more typical situation. So when I'm selling, you know, it's a mix, because when I'm selling, I have my buyers are small, sometimes they're mid-sized, and sometimes they're much larger. If they're larger, then I think you're right. When they're buying, it's usually they're not fully integrating them. They're saying, look, this is a new business line that we want to add on. And they often operate them as separate businesses, really. But they're just under their own umbrella, and they get a little bit of economies of scale and they might open up their market a little bit more. But when it's a larger business, they're not usually as integrated as well.
Okay, I understand. Well, what would you say, Kevin, that drives or motivates you to do what you do day in and day out?
So one of the really nice things about what I do is that I have a lot of different clients. It's not like when you're at a big firm, oftentimes you might do all of your work for one client. Like I remember when I was doing Fannie Mae work, I'd have like half of my day every day for a couple of years was nothing but Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae is a great company, don't get me wrong, but it gets repetitive doing the same work and the same
Yeah.
deals over and
Don't
over
you find
again.
that boring?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the nice things about what I do is that I don't have repetitive work. I mean, you know, deals are deals. And yes, I mean, when I'm doing a deal, you know, 70 to 80% of the deal is the same as it was the last time, but all the people are different. I get exposed to different entrepreneurs, different lines of business. You know, the government deals are obviously very similar in what they're doing, but I got commercial work as well. And so I learn about new and interesting businesses, and the people are always different. So I always enjoy meeting with and working with new folks. And my clients are almost always just the business owners. And it's always great to kind of be a very small part of their success, right? I mean, these guys have been working decades oftentimes, or sometimes just a few years, but they've been working hard to grow these businesses. And it's just a really great feeling to be part of helping them, you know, realize the value they've been creating.
Yeah.
So it's always been fun.
I feel the same way. I'm in commercial real estate, and it's similar, just like you. I work with different clients, different industries, and I love just hearing, you know, how they started it and what they're doing now and how we can be of any help. So I completely understand. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and some of my clients I've had for years. Some they're brought in just for that transaction, but I get to know them quickly then. So it's a good mix. So I've got some clients that, you know, I've only known for a few months, and I've got clients that I've known for decades.
Yeah. What would you say you're most proud of this far in your career? I know you still have a long road to go, but so far, does anything stand out?
As the what?
Something you're most proud of? What you're most proud of?
Oh, geez. Honestly, I'm, you know, this is sound a little selfish. I'm most proud of just the firm that we've built here, to be honest with you. You know, it's nice to be able to walk the walk a little bit. So, you know, dealing with entrepreneurs, it's always nice to say, yes, I myself am also a successful entrepreneur. You know, we've started this firm 9 years ago. I just hit the milestone where I've been with my firm now longer than any other job I had before. because I was at Shaw Pittman / Pillsbury for 9 years, and now I've done this for 9 years. And so just looking back at the success we've had, that's really my proudest accomplishment of being able to set this thing up and have it be successful for so long. And, knock on wood, continuing on.
Yeah. So 10 years will be 2021 when?
November 1st of next year will be the 10-year mark. Yeah.
That's a big milestone. The big
Yeah.
1-0.
Hopefully we can have a party. It'll, you never know. Things can continue, but hopefully by November of next year we can open the place up and serve some cocktails and.
I think so. Hopefully we will be done with all this by then.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
We won't be done. It'll be like the flu, right? It's never good. I mean,
not done, but
gone away.
Yeah, I think we'll be a totally different situation than we are now.
Right. Yeah.
I hope
it'll be, hopefully everyone will be vaccinated and it'll happen and people will have issues, but it's not going to change how we live anymore. So
yeah. I'm curious, what advice, Kevin, would you give someone who wanted to start off a new business? Let's say they're a startup, they don't know what to do. They can be in whatever type of industry, and anything specifically you would advise them?
Yeah, so it's the same thing I say with acquiring a business.
Okay.
Start a business that you know. So that's the first thing is don't just get into something new. Like if you've got a partner who calls you and says, "Hey, I've got this great idea, it's X, Y, and Z." If you don't understand it, don't accept, right? Only do what you know. The second thing is for all businesses is cash is king, right? Cash is king. You need to do things that are going to generate cash because you can't do anything if you don't have funding. So even if it's you yourself, you still have to pay your rent. Or if you are in a business that has employees, you need to make payroll. Like you absolutely need to make payroll. So look at a business that is going to generate steady cash, even if it's not a lot, that'll generate enough cash to actually fund the business. And if it's a business that's not going to do that, it's just the way it is. It's like a tech company, and you have to really build a product out. Then you got to make sure you have enough funding to last you well beyond what you anticipate needing, because the cash is going to run out faster than you think it is. It always does. So you have to make sure you have enough funding to get you through and get you to the point where you start generating revenue. But so the two main things: one, start what you know, and two, cash.
Great. Having a great team is very important. Surrounding yourself with the right people. How many people do you have there in your team, and how do you find them and creating that, and also creating part of that culture?
Yeah, so it's good. They're good ask because it's not an exact answer. So we have 6 attorneys, and we have 1 staff member, and the staff member is our office administrator, and she happens to be my partner's wife. Although she had a background in doing this, so it wasn't like she'd never done it before. And so she kind of really runs the ship and handles paying the bills and collecting the revenue and, ordering supplies and all of that jazz. But, all the day-to-day stuff, luckily nowadays with computers and tech, we do all our own stuff. Like I don't have a secretary. I don't need a secretary to keep my calendar and enter my time and all that jazz. But then outside, I have a network of people that I bring in for my deals or for anything else I do. So for example, on most acquisitions, there's myself, I've got my colleague Peter, who's a corporate lawyer and also government. He's like my second person so that we always have backup in case something happens, if we get swamped or a family emergency or something else. There's someone else that can do what I do that can step in. And then of course we have the government contracts people. I've got a lawyer that I use who's a tax expert, and he's at another firm. And so I bring him in on all my M&A deals. And I've got another tax lawyer who's kind of a backup if the first one's not available. I've got a woman who I use for ERISA. So she does all the labor and employment and ERISA stuff. And that's really those are the main things that are needed on corporate M&A deals. I usually don't have to go beyond those. I have a real estate experts that I can bring in if I need to. I have a patent and trademark and copyright attorney that I can bring in when I need to. I've got a couple different litigators in various places. So I've really built up a network of referral partners and folks I could bring in on the stuff we work on. So even though we're a small firm, we're really kind of a mid-size when you think of our ability to bring in staff when needed.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good. Does anything come to mind as far as any specific daily habits or skills that you use that's helped you in your career?
Daily habits or skills. I mean, as an attorney, attention to detail is really the biggest thing to worry about. And actually, I'm going to change my answer. Responsiveness. I cannot tell you the number of times I've had clients to tell me that what they like most about me is that I'm responsive, because they've worked with other lawyers who they don't hear from for days. Like they'll send an email and the lawyer won't respond. Like it'll be 2-3 days later and they have to ping the lawyer again. And I just, it's amazing to me that is the case. I mean, I go through my email every day, obviously, throughout the day. Even when I'm on vacation, I go through my email every day. Now, sometimes it might be, hey, I got your message. I'm tied up for a couple of days. I'll get to this on Monday. Or, hey, I'm out of town. Is this something that needs to be done now? I can take the time if I have to, or I can bring someone in where I have to, or can it wait till I get back? That might be the answer, but at least that's the answer. And they'll get that within, this probably the same day, or at the very worst, the day after they send it. So the main habit is, frankly, just reading your email and responding to everybody. It's just amazing to me the number of people that don't do that.
I agree, especially, I don't want to say all lawyers. I've worked with lawyers, especially in commercial real estate transactions, and it is true. Their response time, I mean, I've sometimes, it's been weeks or a week definitely, and I'm trying to follow up with the attorney and finally hear back from them.
Yeah, it does not take long to say, hey, I got your message. I'm tied up on another deal for a couple of days. Can we talk on Thursday? I mean,
yes, it's true. What would you say is your biggest challenge right now with your law firm?
It's the COVID related stuff. The business is fine. Like we haven't had a slowdown, but it's tough not seeing my partners on a regular basis. Like, we are a very collegial firm. Some small firms are really a collection of attorneys and they're all remote and that sort of thing. That's not us. We're actually all 6 of us in the office every day.
Okay.
Some people might, work from home one day, or they might be traveling or on vacation, or, they got a kids event and they're leaving early, that sort of thing. But in general, we're all in the office. So that hasn't happened since March, right? So we've gone, 8 months where I'm not around other lawyers on a regular basis, where I can just pop into their office and we can talk about stuff. Now, I can still talk to them, but it's on the phone or it's on email. It's just not quite the same. So the biggest challenge has been the fact that I've been working from home. I came into the office for this call, but I'm only in here every couple of weeks to pick up mail and do some other things. But just, trying to manage work and not being around our folks. And then at the same time, dealing with kid issues. Like, I've got young kids that are in school, but obviously they're not actually in school, they're home.
Yes.
And my wife, who's a rock star, is handling most of that, but she needs support too. So just trying to balance everything, which I'm sure everyone's going through.
Yeah, tell me about it. It's not easy. I have 3 boys, but my youngest one is 4, so he's in daycare.
Okay.
But my 2 oldest ones, similar to, I have a 9 and a 7-year-old.
Yeah, mine are 12 and 6. So I'm not too, we're kind of speaking the same language.
Yeah, so they're in school, but school's home now, and it's tough, especially when you're trying to do work.
Yep.
Yeah, so I completely understand. That's great. Is there something? Let me say it this way. Knowing what you know now, is there something you would have done differently back then, or you wish you would have done something differently?
Okay, so when I was a lawyer at a big firm, I always thought I wanted to go in-house and be an in-house lawyer. And I didn't realize when I was younger that there's a certain window when you can hit that, right? Kind of between your 2nd and 6th year is really the best time to leave to go in-house. And I wasn't really fully aware of that. And so I didn't really do so. And so by the time when I was, when we're getting closer to 2008, and I've been out of law school for about 10 years, and I started looking in-house jobs, it was kind of too late for me almost. They wanted younger people, more junior people, and I was competing for jobs with people that weren't as qualified, but they'd had in-house experience, and that's what they wanted. So for the lawyers on the call, or who might be on the call, who might be seeing this, if you're young and you're thinking of going in-house, kind of focus on that early on, because you have a kind of a short window to do it. So that was kind of the one thing I would have done differently. Now, as it turns out, I think I'm much happier doing this than I would be if I was in-house. Like if it was in-house, it'd be a 9-to-5 job, or a lot more than 9-to-5, and for a salary and that sort of thing. And you're kind of at the whim of the company you're at, because when you're there, you're a cost center, right? You're not revenue generating, you're a cost center. And when times are tough, what gets caught, what gets cut, cost centers get cut. When you're at a firm now, I'm a revenue center for my firm. So, and I'm my own boss, so I'm not going to cut myself. So, the one thing to think about for anyone is realize where you're at. Are you a cost center or are you a revenue center? And if you're a cost center, you're always going to be a potential top from the block, right? Mm-hmm. So, focus on, doing work, or at least doing work at a place where you can be more of a revenue generator than a cost center.
It sounds like I think you chose the right course.
Yeah, no, I ended up doing well. So.
Yeah. In the legal firm and in the law field, there's a lot of, you have partners and there's mentees and mentors. Is there a mentor that comes to mind that has helped you along the way, Kevin? And if so, what did you learn from that person?
Yeah, so I've had a lot over the years. So focusing just on law. So I start, when I was at Shaw Pittman, one of the people that was kind of like took me under their wing and really kind of, gave me tough love was a guy named Craig DeRitter. He was a really good attorney who kind of was practical and, let me know what the politics of the law firm was. He was the one who kind of brought me in to do that Fannie Mae work. He's the one that recommended that I move out to the Northern Virginia office because the Fannie Mae work was going away and the Northern Virginia stuff needed to be there. So he was really good at knowing how the pieces fit and where to put people. And then once I got to the Northern Virginia office, I worked a lot with Steve Meltzer and Craig Chasen. And Steve Meltzer was a really good mentor, and he was really good at just explaining how to be a lawyer, how to actually practice the law, and how to negotiate and how to do transactions. He was one of teaching you things like, don't change happy to glad, right? Don't be that lawyer who's always just nit stuff to make themselves look like they're useful. Only make changes that are needed, that sort of thing. And then Craig Chasen was the attorney who, he was kind of more of the Brett Favre school of mentoring. He wasn't going to teach. His way of teaching was to watch him work, right? Mm-hmm. And that's, it's a way of doing it. So, and I learned how to do government contract M&A and negotiations just by sitting on conference calls and listening to him talk. And so that was, he was a good mentor in that way. And then at the current firm is my partner, Pat. So, we have a variation of ages. I'm the young guy here. Pat is literally my parents' age. His wife and him, they got married a week after my parents did, like literally the same year. Oh, wow. So, and his kids are the same age as I am. And so he's kind of a father / mentor. And he's really kind of taught me the practice of actually running a law firm, because he'd run law firms before as well. And kind of learning that aspect of it. So, and those are just a few. I mean, there's been a lot, and I don't want to, make anyone feel upset they're being left off, but those were the lawyers in particular that I had the closest relationship with on, or not close relationship, but the ones that had the biggest impact on kind of my career direction.
Does anyone come to mind as far as, on the commercial side, maybe client or something like that?
Yeah, so on the client side, it would definitely be a guy named Stefan Lalos. So Stefan had an IT staffing company, and I represented him back when I was at Pillsbury. And he, they did a lot of acquisitions, and I worked a lot with him. And when I went to the small firm, he was one of the first people to make sure he sent me work. So he was, wanted to make sure I was, he was helping me out, and he had a lot of stuff on the side. He had personal investments, and he had me do those for him. And then again, when I left the small firm and started this firm, he was again right there, calling me up and making sure, sending as much work as he could my way to help me get started. So Stefan was a great guy to understand what it was like to start a business, and helped out in places where he knew he could help out, and sent me some work to get me on my feet. So he was a great guy. Okay. It still is a great guy.
That's good. When I say the word success, Kevin, does something or someone come to mind? What do you think of?
You mean besides myself?
Yes, besides yourself. That's a good one.
No, I mean, I mean, there's lots of measures of success. I mean, success is obviously for me, it's not. I don't want to name any one person, but success is kind of establishing a goal, and your goals could change. Establishing a goal and achieving it, right? It's as simple as that. So my goal at starting this firm was I had a certain revenue level that I wanted to hit, and we did that right away. And now I kind of was like, look, I want to get to the point where I've developed my network and I've done enough work for enough clients that they're referral sources, and that the phone is just always ringing, and I'm not really worried about whether or not I have enough work to do. And I'm at that point. I've been at the point for several years now. I mean, I still do networking. I still build out that network because there's always new people. I enjoy doing it, and also I if you're not growing, you're dying, right? So I'm still out there trying to continue to grow the business and grow my referral network and meet with people like talking to you. You and I, hadn't known each other really before this. Keeping that up, and that's what success is. It's just achieving your goals and then just continuing to build on it.
I like that you mentioned that. I think that whole making your phone ring is an art and skill. And you said you sort of hit that stride a few years ago. Do you think there was an inflection point in your business or something that happened that got you into that stride?
No, there was not one thing. It just happened that I've been building up the practice for years. So, I had a network when I was at the big firm. But I just wasn't getting any work from people because I was an associate at a big firm. Why was anyone going to send me work? So as soon as I went to a small firm, I started getting more work in from folks, and then I built out that network further, and then came to this firm, and I had the same network and just kept building on it and building on it. And I think it wasn't like one thing happened. I had one big deal that hit that I worked on. And that was, as it turned out, that was a referral both from another big firm that had conflict and an investment banker who I had been doing stuff with for a really long time. So they both kind of referred me in, and that was a really big deal. And then I just happened to have a bunch of other deals that hit at the same time. The other thing that was helpful was I had done a deal with Live Oak Bank as the investor, and Live Oak was really happy with the work that I did, and they'd started sending me stuff as well. And this broker who they worked with did as well. So that really generated a lot of work. This from Live Oak Bank and this M&A firm called Genesis. They started sending me a lot more consistent work, and that kind of really helped a lot. But again, that started as a one client that I'd gotten because they referred to me by a CPA I had met at a networking event. So it all catches up eventually.
Yeah. It's long term. It takes time to build that business. I agree. Is there something that comes to mind, Kevin, that you think lawyers are doing wrong in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said before, well, a couple things. One, lawyers in general are not good business people. There are exceptions, but it's hard to know what your strengths and weaknesses are. And so a lot of attorneys, especially on the business side, need to know whether or not they're good business people, or whether they should have other people handle that aspect of the business for them. And there are some lawyers that are better about that than others, about bringing folks in to help them with the business side of law. The other thing is just, again, it's being responsive to your clients and getting to know your clients, understanding what their needs are. So a lot of lawyers, they're given a legal problem and they give a legal solution to the legal problem. So for me, when a client comes to me with a legal problem, my first question is, well, what's underlying this? Like, what is the business reason of why this is coming? Because oftentimes the legal problem isn't the actual problem, it's something else. They just think this is the legal problem. But it turns out it's like, I don't want to solve your legal problem. I want to solve your business problem. Now, that might be this legal issue, or we might be able to go around that and address it in another way. So I think the big problem lawyers have is they focus too much on the law and not on the client, and figuring out, what the client's actual needs are and how you can best address those needs, and not just the legal question they happen to ask you.
I love that. I love the last part, especially when you said, they just focus on the legal problem instead of maybe seeing the whole picture and find out what's really going on with the business.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I agree. For your business, Kevin, what does the next 5 years looks like? What's the vision?
So, we will go through a transition. So as I mentioned, my partner, Pat, he's the same age as my parents. And so you can probably do the math on that one. So he probably doesn't have 5 years left. And neither does his wife, who's our office administrator. So, the two of us are really the people that generate most of the billable work for our firm. The others are more in a support role. I mean, they generate some client work as well. But we're going to have to figure out how we're going to do the firm, whether we can maybe find someone who can step into Pat's shoes on the government piece, kind of like I generate the work, and on the corporate side, maybe if he could bring someone in to handle that. Or we might have to, potentially merge with another firm that has similar abilities that we do. So we'd have to figure that one out because, again, people aren't always going to stay in the same place.
Sure.
And Pat, we started the firm 9 years ago, and when we started it, he told us he'd give us at least 5, and he's given us 9 so far. So hopefully we get 5 more out of him, but you never know.
Yeah, that's true. Last question: what do you like to do for free on your free time?
Did I mention I have 2 kids? So no, honestly, I mean that's most of it. The free time is spending time with the family. So my kids are in Scouts, and so that's a lot of time right there. They do a little bit of sports. My younger one, he was doing soccer, and so I in the Scouts, I'm one of the assistant Scoutmasters for both
Oh, okay,
the older
that's
kid
great.
and the younger kids. So I get pretty involved in that, and then I kind of help coach on the younger kids. So when my oldest one was in soccer, I coached him, and then now the younger one's in soccer, I coach him up. My older one, he does rugby and cross country, and I don't coach that, but there's obviously involved going to those activities. My wife and I, we're big vacationers and travelers, so we like to travel around. During COVID, we did the whole RV thing, so we went up and visited my mother in Michigan, and went to Niagara Falls, and we took another RV trip down to North Carolina, and then we took another RV trip down to Williamsburg, and we got another one planned for the Outer Banks in the spring.
Okay.
And then, before COVID, we were more international, so taking trips to the Caribbean, and now the kids are getting older. We're looking forward to Europe and some other places too. So
that's good.
So, kids and travel, that's probably the 2 things.
Yeah, especially if you're involved, as you said, from the Scouts and the soccer, as far as being coach and everything else. I'm sure that.
Yeah, I mean, I've my younger one, he's got a den meeting on Sunday, and it's my turn to run that one. So I was putting together a presentation for Cub Scouts. Spent a couple hours doing that yesterday.
Are they still meeting in person, or are they doing it remotely now?
It's a mix. So we do some things remotely and some things in person. So we've done some, like in the older kids, we did some hikes and some that sort of thing that can be done outside.
Sure.
The younger kids, we're doing, since they're 6-year-olds, that's different stuff. So we're doing healthy food and eating habits. And so we're going to do that remotely because we don't want them together sharing food and that sort of thing. But it's a mix between remote and virtual.
Yeah, that's good. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you or want to reach out to contact you, Kevin?
Sure. So the website is www.mwllegal, that's 2 L's in the middle, mwllegal.com. And that'll have all of our contact information. Or you can just drop me an email directly at klearned, KLEARNED at mwllegal.com.
Okay, fantastic.
So, or if you search Kevin Learned and Lawyer, that'll pop up too on web search. So
yeah, I think you're probably the only one with that name.
Yeah, it's a little bit tough. You just type Kevin Learned, it's not going to help you because it's a verb. But if you tack in lawyer or attorney to the end, then it'll find me.
Yeah. Kevin, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you. Take care.
All right, take care.
All right.